Hey everyone, it's Bob Pulver from Elevate Your AIQ. We are at Unleash Americas in Las Vegas, and I have the pleasure of speaking with Ophir Samson from Ezra AI Labs. How you doing today, Ophir?
Good. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy day. I hope the conference is going well so far.
It is, yeah. It's great to be here.
Excellent. So I want to hear about your background, of course, but we're going to get into this very hot space around AI interviewers and why that is such an important area of AI capabilities and an example of where we are deploying AI where we should, not just wherever we can. And this is really improving the candidate experience, candidate opportunity, but also helping recruiting teams get that quality of the funnel earlier in the funnel, and just helping from a reputation and employer branding perspective. So there's a lot to unpack, but why don't we just start with telling my audience a little bit about your background and what impetus for Ezra AI Labs.
Yeah, so I started my career as a mathematician. I was an academic. I did a PhD in math at MIT and spent a long time kind of deep into equations and spending a lot of time then outside academia in startups. I was at Groupon when there was a tiny startup. I ran a social impact investment fund, did an MBA at Stanford a long time ago, and then spent 10 years in the autonomous driving industry. And I started my first startup about 2.5 years ago in the voice AI space.
Okay.
And I was really kind of driven by the idea that when people talk, they share a lot more about themselves than when they are writing. And, you get much richer data when you're like, if we were having this conversation over email, we'd both be saying 10% of the content. And so the ability to kind of get to know people is dramatically improved when they talk versus when they write. And then that kind of got me thinking about how do you kind of get to know people beyond a piece of paper? And that helped me build a bunch of voice AI technology that was very kind of responsive, low latency, textually aware, can be controlled, kind of building, some would call it deep tech around voice AI. And my first company was acquired by one of the world's largest online dating companies to apply that to matchmaking. And then I started Ezra to apply similar technology to kind of matchmaking, but within employment. Because it's kind of crazy to me that one of the most important decisions that we make, where we're going to work and who we're going to hire, is made via a comparison between two pieces of paper, a resume, which is a terrible representation of a candidate, and a JD, which is a terrible representation of a job. And so I was really, drawn to this idea of how do you voice AI to make that better?
Yeah, I had done a bunch of research as an analyst in the space a few years ago in what we were calling the interview intelligence space, which is, a human-to-human conversation transcribed by an AI interviewer. And I was always curious, well, first of all, to be able to overcome any potential biases from an individual interviewer, to understand some of the nuance that you're talking about that comes out in natural language, certainly accounting for speech patterns and different ways in which people sort of present themselves, but still, to your point earlier, really getting a three-dimensional view of someone that, certainly a resume or CV doesn't explain, and even some of the other things you might go through, like, recruiter phone screen and things like that, may not fully capture. And I think extending some of that capability to the top of funnel, I think, is incredibly valuable for everybody, as I was alluding to before and as you were describing. And so it just seems like a win-win scenario, because the candidate gets, I'm not sure if there's feedback that goes back to the candidate, but at least they know that they've been given a shot, even if it's not a human being. You're still getting all of that nuance, and I just feel like there's a lot of humans that are following a script and acting in a robotic way as they do it. So it seems like candidate acceptance of having this interaction with an AI, either avatar or voice, pure voice, or over a conversational, text-based interface, they're becoming more and more accepting of this type of interaction, because what's the alternative, right?
Right. Well, about 4 or 5 months ago, the penetration of agentic recruiters in enterprises in the US was hovering around 1%. They were somewhere between 7 and 10%. By the end of this year, will easily be above 30%, I think. So this stuff is coming. And it's coming at an important time because with the explosion of AI, it's becoming so easy for candidates to apply for jobs. I mean, there are plenty of tools around where you give it your resume and then it will apply to 50 jobs for you. But on the other side of each one of these 50 jobs is a recruiter who's receiving a resume.
Yep.
So as a kind of cost of applying for a job goes down to zero, the volume of applications goes up to infinity.
Yep.
And recruiters cannot possibly filter through everyone. And the good candidates are not getting a chance to stand out. And so I always say that like one of the differences in our approach versus others in the space is we're not trying to replace a human interview. And in all of our customer engagements, not one human interview has been cut out across all of our customers. And we have large enterprise customers doing thousands of interviews, not one human interview has been reduced. What we are fighting is a resume screen.
Okay.
That's our enemy because we don't believe that it's fair or good to judge a human by a piece of paper, a resume, especially when that resume is written by ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So I can talk more about the differences between our approach and others, but that's kind of core to our approach.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about the resume is it's not just the structure and the two-dimensional nature of it, but there's a lot more that you can explain verbally through, whether it's these other duties as assigned as we see on job descriptions, but just sort of preparing you for the inaccuracy of the job description to begin with, that this is a fraction of what you're going to actually encounter and do, and the skills that we may need, but being able to capture that verbally in a three-dimensional way allows you to expound upon all the extracurriculars and other things that you have done that actually might express transferable skills. It might express all these other ways in which you're not just hiring me for the job as you've outlined it and as you've budgeted, but there's potential longevity to how you assimilate within the organization and grow together.
I'll give you an example. One of our engineers at Ezra, he has a resume that if I was just judging him by his resume, wouldn't have given him a second. He hadn't been to college. He hadn't worked at any company I'd ever heard of. Very few extracurricular activities, which is something I personally have a bias towards. And so if I were just judging him by the resume, he wouldn't stand out at all. And we had 1,200 applications for a senior engineer role. Because he was applying for a job at Ezra, he had an interview, and I saw the results of his interview, and he got 3.6 out of 4, and that kind of piqued my interest. I watched the interview, I read the transcript, I saw the evaluations to each question, I saw how Ezra was evaluating his communication style, and it was clear that this guy is really serious. So I jumped on a real call with him, and he blew my socks off, and he ended up being the person we hired. So out of all 1,200 people. So it's a nice example of how when you kind of get to know someone beyond the resume, you'll find needles in your haystack that you just wouldn't otherwise.
No, that's a great example. You just reminded me of a personal experience that I had when I was working for a small RPO firm, and we were hiring a new recruiter, and this resume was just awful. I had not done anything related to customer service or recruiting or anything like that. It was also, the resume was littered with grammatical, problems and things like that. And people that knew him were just like, trust me, just talk to him. And same outcome. I was like, this guy is solid.
Some people just don't present themselves well on paper, and that may or may not be important for your role. One of the things we're seeing, Zapier, for example, is a big customer of ours. And they were very helpful. They were early design partners of ours as well. So, another difference between our approach and others is that I didn't come at this from the perspective of here is some cool technology, what can we apply it to? I came at it from the perspective of how do we design something with the leading experts in the field that uses this technology to unlock problems. So every single part of our product was built in partnership with leading talent experts. And Zapier were a phenomenal design partner for us. But one of the things that came out of the work with them is that they are screening about 5 times as many people as they would without Ezra. So when they use Ezra, they can review 5 times as many people and give them a fair shot. than they could without. So, for me, that's the true impact of what we're trying to do. We're trying to expand, expand access, in a way that is much harder to game, because you can't just get an AI generated resume and kind of get past the screen.
Have you thought about making this available as like a candidate solution to practice?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have tools like that as well, to allow candidates to practice their, practice an interview. Obviously, it uses different questions than the ones that they have in the live interview. But yeah, there's a bunch of candidate features that we've either launched or are about to launch, to help the candidate as well. But we fundamentally believe that just by virtue of giving the candidate the ability to engage with a company much sooner than they would if they were doing the regular process, by virtue of the fact that they don't have to schedule the interview, they can do it at any time. About 50% of our candidates take interviews outside normal working hours. By virtue of the fact that candidates know that if they're meeting a human interviewer at 4 p.m. on a Friday, they'll have a different experience from 9 a.m. on a Monday. And also by virtue of the fact that they can use their voice and they can explain, they can answer the specific questions the company wants to know about them, rather than guess by, trying to guess the right kind of bullet points to put on their resume. There's a lot of kind of benefits for the candidate, and it's shown in the results. So we have an average rating of about 4.5 stars out of 5.
That's good.
About 85% of our candidates rate the experience 4 stars or 5 stars. And a really interesting phenomenon for younger candidates is that when we look at the feedback, more and more prefer to talk to AIs versus human. Now, I have my own kind of gripes about that from a societal perspective, but nevertheless, when you're talking to a human, there's a lot more, many more social dynamics, and so, which is a good thing. I'm not saying, but candidates give far more loquacious answers, data-rich content, which gives the recruiter much more to kind of accurately judge the candidate on.
Yeah, I think that aligns with some survey results that I saw, where it's like about 65% or something prefer having this AI conversation. I think it's an interesting thing to think about in terms of the technology acceptance, and I think when we think about AI reviewing resumes at all, people think that, I'd much rather have a human, review that. But I think that's I don't know that that's a fully informed, sort of perspective about what we're really talking about. I think at scale, yes, of course, if AI is not doing a good job and it's not, mitigating bias, then you don't obviously want that to scale. But your interview is with a single human, and that human will have their own inherent biases, for better or worse.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Excellent. So when you think about some of the potential candidate fraud, like let's say I'm interviewing and I'm not great at interviewing, and maybe I am a tech savvy person, and I think an AI can help me address these. I mean, you have some sort of fraud detection kinds of features as well?
Yes, we do. We have a number of them. We have general fraud detection that flags suspicious things about you just based on your resume and other flags that we look at, and that's becoming fairly kind of bread and butter, so everyone needs to have that. Secondly, it's cheat detection. So we have a proprietary model that determines or makes a prediction about whether you are reading from a script like ChatGPT or another AI tool, or if you're speaking spontaneously. Now, it makes a prediction on the scale, but then explains to the recruiter why we've made that prediction, the timestamps, and so forth, so that the recruiter can make their own judgment. And that's a really important point to make, because another kind of difference in our approach is that we want the recruiting team to be very, very much involved in the this is unlike some of the other products in this space. This is not fire and forget. We've actually turned down quite a lot of business, which I'm sure my investors will hate to hear me say, but we've turned down quite a lot of business from customers who have said, we just want something to just, buy from you today, tomorrow just does our interviews. We prefer to, we're very selective actually with who we work with. We work with enterprises, top talent teams who really want to stay at the front edge of AI and work with the AI, not get replaced by the AI, work with the AI to be in the loop. So for example, when we say we think this person is reading from a script with fairly high confidence and here are the timestamps we find suspicious, we want them to kind of go in and make their own determination because we cannot make a determination on behalf of the company.
Right.
And then the last thing that we have on the fraud detection side is deepfake identification. It's becoming more and more common that it will actually be avatars that will take the interview, and they're getting so good. Some of the ones that we've caught, none of the human recruiters that we've worked with have been able to catch it with their naked eye. They're getting so good. So we have a whole kind of deepfake detection system. We've done a very comprehensive evaluation of all of the different tools and vendors in the market to help us with that. We've picked a partner and we'll make an announcement about that soon. But yeah, that's in the platform as well.
Okay, nice, excellent. Yeah, I mean, you want to give real human candidates all of this opportunity and exposure, but you've certainly got fraud issues that are becoming widespread, and so just on the cheating aspects of it. So it's like a combination. The prediction of that is a combination of the speech pattern as well as eye tracking. Or
so we actually don't do any eye tracking for various compliance reasons. Also, so in my spare time, I'm a professional magician, and
I forgot to ask you about that.
So I've done it all. I've been a professional magician for 25 years, and so I've studied misdirection a lot. I know there's a lot of inaccuracies about reading where people are looking, and also some people just look around the room. That's just what they feel more comfortable doing. Some people have two screens. Some people get an emergency phone call. They have to look away. It's a very shady area for me. We base it on voice paralinguistics and prosody factors. Excuse me. Importantly, we take compliance extremely seriously. So we're very thoughtful about what is impacting candidate score.
Yeah. Wow, that's really interesting. How on earth do you have time to be a professional magician? So yeah, how, just obviously we're getting into a little bit of your personal life here, but that's quite a side hustle to do all that you're doing, and then this magician career. So just curious about how often you get to perform. Where are you performing? You have a residency here in Las Vegas I should know about?
I don't have a residency here. It's always been a hobby which I've done professionally. I started when I was a kid. I was trained by the guy who won the world championships, and he became a close mentor of mine. And yeah, just kind of stayed with me my entire life. I do close-up card magic. For me, I like it because it's one of the only things that can make people feel like a kid again in a really nice way. I think the state of the world is such that, people really like feeling that, like a moment of magic and disbelief. It's a really big part of my life. I perform about 4 or 5 times a year. Now it's obviously, there's less time to do it.
Sure.
But I never leave home without a deck of cards. So yeah.
That is fascinating. Awesome. Well, Ophir, it's been so nice talking to you. I'm glad you had a great event. I wish you the absolute best of luck with everything that you're doing, both on the magic side and of course on the AI side. I think there's a lot of innovation to come from you guys at Ezra AI Labs. So
thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for being here, and thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you next time.